At midnight on October 1, 2025, the United States federal government entered a shutdown. Congress had failed once again to agree on a continuing resolution to fund federal agencies for the 2026 fiscal year, and as a result, hundreds of thousands of federal employees were either furloughed or required to continue working without pay. What might have seemed like another Washington deadlock in the Beltway quickly manifested outside the Capitol's arcades, far beyond political headlines. It landed in airport terminals, control towers, and security lines across the nation. From that first hour of the funding lapse, the infrastructure of American air travel began to show cracks. It wasn't mechanical failures, weather disturbances, or airline strikes that triggered the cascade. It was people whose jobs are often unseen, whose names seldom appear on boarding passes, but whose roles are indispensable for safe flight. Air traffic controllers of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and screeners of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA. These men and women were classified as essential. That meant they had to show up for work, even though their paychecks had stopped. The paradox was stark. The system needed them, yet the system refused to pay them. Within just days, the strain became visible. The first week of the shutdown saw reports of staffing triggers at major airports and control centers. Facilities in Dallas, Chicago, Nashville, and Newark began running short on controllers, and TSA lanes started to thin. Controllers, already working 6-day weeks and long shifts in calmer conditions, now faced unpaid labor, mounting financial stress, and fatigue. Sick calls surged. Absenteeism ticked upward. In a job that demands near-perfect focus, the human margin began to shrink. By early November, the nation's air travel system had entered what many analysts called a crisis mode. On a single weekend, more than 16,700 flights were delayed, and over 2,200 canceled nationwide. In New York City area airports, the absentee rate among controllers reached 80% at some control towers. The FAA confirmed that nearly half of its core 30 busiest U.S. airports were operating below safe staffing levels. Flow restrictions, ground holds, and other emergency traffic controls were put in place not because of storms or volcanic ash, but because of human shortages. How does a political funding fight in Washington lead to a delayed flight in Houston or a long TSA line at Phoenix? It begins with how the aviation system is structured. Air traffic controllers manage an enormous network of flights, directing departures and arrivals across thousands of miles via radar, radio, and precise timing. When staffing falls, the FAA triggers a flow restriction or ground stop. Fewer flights are permitted per hour to maintain safety margins. At LaGuardia, for example, fewer than 20 planes per hour were permitted to land during one such restriction. That may seem modest, yet these adjustments ripple through the national schedule. A delay in New York cascades to Chicago, then Los Angeles, then Dallas. Aircraft miss connections. Crew duty times are exceeded. The schedule unravels. Meanwhile, security screening at airports began showing its own cracks. At Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport, 2 out of 5 TSA checkpoint lanes were open, with wait times stretching to 3 hours. At smaller airports, the situation was equally dire. Travelers reported waiting in winding lines for over an hour simply to pass through security. The staffing issues at TSA stem from the same underlying problem. Unpaid essential workers are human, and when the financial strain hits, their ability to function under pressure degrades. The numbers speak loudest. According to trade group data, by early November, over 3.2 million air passengers had been impacted by delays or cancellations tied to staffing issues. Prior to the shutdown, staffing-related delays accounted for around 5% of all delays. Now they had surged to over 50% in impacted hubs. In airports like Nashville, Dallas, Los Angeles, and Houston, delays of 30 to 90 minutes became common. Ground stops at airports such as LaGuardia, Newark, and Reagan National were first issued in late October, with one facility halting departures entirely for hours because controller staffing dropped below safe limits. The political machinations behind the shutdown are crucial context. Former President Donald J. Trump and the Republican Party pushed for a clean, continuing resolution to keep funding at existing levels, while separate negotiations on domestic policy and foreign aid played out. Democrats, led by Speaker Mike Johnson and the House and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, demanded that any funding bill include extensions of Affordable Care Act subsidies and protections for Medicaid. Trump leaned into the shutdown politically, framing the stoppage as leverage to force his agenda, even as the infrastructure of air travel buckled under its weight. The controller shortages and screening delays became one of the first visible national impacts of the stalemate. The impact on TSA and FAA staffing is layered. Controllers are specially trained professionals whose shifts require extreme concentration and alertness. When they are paid late, worried about rent and bills, and working extended hours, fatigue and distraction creep in. The National Transportation Safety Board chair warned that controllers working without pay face distraction and stress that can compromise performance. At the same time, new controller trainees cannot be hired or certified without funding. The FAA's hiring pipeline froze, with a documented shortfall of some 3,500 controllers even before the shutdown. The crisis was not created overnight, but the shutdown amplified it. If the shutdown continues, the future problems grow deeper. The backlog of unpaid employees will widen. The hiring freeze means that when staffing finally stabilizes, there will be fewer trained controllers ready to step in. Outstanding maintenance, upgrades to radar and communication systems, field inspections and facility security, including at control towers, have all been delayed. The ripple effect could extend well beyond a season of travel. Holiday disruptions around Thanksgiving and Christmas, long-term damage to airline schedules, undermined consumer confidence, and a possible reevaluation of how national airspace is managed. Even more troubling, the safety margin in the aviation system may erode. While the FAA insisted it would not permit unsafe conditions and said it would shut portions of airspace if needed, delaying flights, even by tens of minutes, is itself a symptom of stressed safety lines. Controllers' fatigue, delayed maintenance, and system stress can combine in unpredictable ways. Experts warn that a major shutdown-induced operational failure could trigger a reevaluation of air traffic management standards, stricter scheduling limits, or even partial curtailment of flights during peak travel seasons until staffing is fully restored. For travelers, the message is simple. Arrive early, choose morning flights, allow extra time, be flexible. But this isn't just advice. It's a reality rooted in how fragile the system has become. The next time you're in line at the TSA checkpoint or sitting idle on a taxiway, remember, the reason might not be the airplane. It might be a budget fight in Washington, a furlough in an air traffic control tower, or a screening lane with fewer officers than usual. The October 1st shutdown didn't just pause funding. It exposed a critical weakness in one of the most sophisticated transportation networks in the world. The delay you face is not incidental, it is structural. The next time you wait 2 hours at security or see your flight held on the tarmac, remember, behind that delay lies a shutdown, a budget stalemate, a responsibility in Washington that touches your travel plans. This is facts on trial. Until the funding is restored, expect more turbulence in the skies. At the stroke of midnight on October 1st, 2025, the United States found itself caught in the turbulence of a federal government shutdown. Congress, tangled in a web of disagreements, failed to reach a consensus on a continuing resolution to fund vital federal agencies for the upcoming fiscal year 2026. The aftermath was immediate and severe. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees faced furloughs or were compelled to work without pay. While this scenario may have appeared as another typical deadlock in the political arena, its repercussions swiftly cascaded across the nation, infiltrating airport terminals, control towers, and security lines far removed from the capital. In the initial hours following the funding lapse, the fragile infrastructure supporting American air travel began to reveal its vulnerabilities. The problem stemmed not from mechanical issues, inclement weather, or airline strikes, but rather from the dedicated individuals whose essential roles often go unnoticed in the travel process. Air traffic controllers of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and screeners of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, found themselves categorized as essential. This designation mandated their presence at work, even as their paychecks came to a standstill, presenting a stark paradox. The system depended on these individuals, yet they were left without compensation. As days passed, the strain on the air travel infrastructure grew increasingly evident. By the end of the first week of the shutdown, reports surfaced of staffing crises at major airports and air traffic control centers across the country. Airports in bustling cities like Dallas, Chicago, and Nashville began to operate with an alarming shortage of controllers, while the TSA experienced thinning lines at security checkpoints. These highly trained professionals, already accustomed to demanding schedules, were now grappling with the added burden of unpaid labor, financial stress, and fatigue. The inevitable consequence was a rise in sick calls and absenteeism, as workers struggled to maintain the near-perfect concentration required for their critical roles. As November approached, various analysts began to categorize the nation's air travel system as functioning in a state of crisis. A single weekend saw a staggering 16,700 flights delayed and over 2,200 canceled nationwide. In New York City area airports, controller absentee rates spiked to an astonishing 80% in certain facilities. The FAA confirmed that nearly half of its core 30 busiest airports were operating below the safe staffing levels essential for maintaining smooth operations. Flow restrictions, ground stops, and other emergency traffic measures were implemented, not due to storms or natural disasters, but because of a shortage of human resources. The connection between a political funding struggle in Washington and disrupted flights in cities like Houston or prolonged TSA lines in Phoenix becomes clearer when examining the aviation system's intricate framework. Air traffic controllers oversee a vast network of flights, managing departures and arrivals across thousands of miles through radar, radio communication, and stringent timing. When staffing numbers dwindle, the FAA resorts to implementing flow restrictions or ground stops, reducing the number of flights allowed to land in order to maintain safety protocols. For instance, at LaGuardia Airport, only 20 aircraft were permitted to land in an hour during one such restriction. While the figure seems modest, the ripple effect it creates can devastate the national travel schedule. A delay in New York can quickly extend to Chicago, then ripple out to Los Angeles and eventually to Dallas, resulting in missed connections and extended delays. Compounding these complications, the TSA was not immune to the consequences of the shutdown. At Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport, only 2 of 5 TSA checkpoint lanes remained operational, resulting in wait times reaching an unbearable 3 hours. Smaller airports were scarcely faring better, with travelers reporting lines snaking for over an hour just to pass through security. The problems within the TSA mirrored those faced by the FAA. Unpaid essential workers, under immense financial pressure, faced difficulties in maintaining the level of efficiency necessary for effective operation. The statistical impact of the crisis was formidable. By early November, over 3.2 million air passengers were affected by delays or cancellations directly tied to staffing shortages. Prior to the onset of the shutdown, staffing-related delays constituted approximately 5% of all delays. However, this figure skyrocketed to over 50% in the affected airports. Major travel hubs such as Nashville, Dallas, Los Angeles, and Houston became accustomed to delays ranging from 30 to 90 minutes, as ground stops became commonplace at major airports including LaGuardia, Newark, and Reagan National. Understanding the political background of the shutdown provides essential context to these developments. The friction arose from former President Donald J. Trump and the Republican Party advocating for a clean continuing resolution that would maintain existing funding levels, while Democrats, led by Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, insisted that any funding legislation include provisions extending Affordable Care Act subsidies and protections for Medicaid. Trump, leaning into the shutdown politically, framed it as an opportunity to leverage his agenda. All the while, the air travel system buckled under the mounting pressure of controller shortages and screening delays. The nuanced implications of the TSA and FAA staffing concerns are significant. Air traffic controllers require extensive training and operate under a high level of concentration and alertness. When payments are delayed and financial worries overshadow their thoughts, fatigue and distractions can easily infiltrate their work. The chair of the National Transportation Safety Board warned that controllers experiencing delayed compensation can face distraction and stress that jeopardizes their ability to perform effectively. Adding to the concern, the FAA's hiring pipeline froze. No new controller trainees could be recruited or certified during this shutdown, with an existing documented shortfall of 3,500 controllers even before the onset of the shutdown. The situation had been critical, but now the shutdown intensified this pre-existing crisis. Should the shutdown persist, the repercussions will become increasingly severe. The backlog of unpaid federal employees will only deepen, and the freeze on hiring means that once staffing stabilization occurs, there will be fewer trained controllers available to step in. Maintenance and necessary upgrades for radar and communication systems, field inspections, and facility security, especially in control towers, all face significant delays. The consequences could extend well beyond this singular travel season, posing potential disruptions during critical holiday travel periods around Thanksgiving and Christmas. Long-term damage to airline scheduling frameworks, diminished consumer trust, and a reevaluation of national airspace management dynamics. Furthermore, an alarming thought looms regarding the safety margins of the aviation system. The FAA reassured the public that it would not allow unsafe conditions to arise and would shut down portions of airspace if necessary. Nevertheless, any delays in flight schedules, even if measured in mere minutes, serve as indicators of the stressed conditions within safety protocols. Controllers' fatigue, delayed maintenance schedules, and systemic strains can converge in unpredictable and potentially dangerous ways. Experts caution that a major operational failure induced by the shutdown could trigger a re-evaluation of air traffic management standards, the establishment of stricter scheduling limits, or even partial flight curtailment during peak travel seasons until staffing levels are adequately restored. For travelers impacted by these unfolding events, the message is clear. Arrive early, opt for morning flights, allow extra time, and remain flexible. This guidance transcends mere suggestions. It reflects the stark realities of a system that has become increasingly fragile. The next time you find yourself standing in a long TSA line or waiting idly on a taxiway, it's vital to recognize that the underlying causes may not be attributable to issues with airlines, aircraft, or weather patterns. Instead, you might be witnessing the fallout from a budget impasse in Washington, a forced furlough within an air traffic control center, or a diminished workforce at a security screening facility. The shutdown on October 1st did not merely suspend funding. It illuminated a critical weakness underlying one of the world's most sophisticated transportation networks. Delays encountered are not incidental occurrences. They result from structural issues entrenched in the system. The next time you face extended waits at security or notice your flight being delayed on the tarmac, keep in mind that behind these inconveniences lies a broader narrative: a government shutdown, a political stalemate, and a responsibility situated in Washington that profoundly impacts your travel experiences. This situation is a poignant reminder of how interconnected our systems are and how funding and governance can have ripple effects that touch lives far beyond the political sphere. As we navigate the turbulence of travel during this period, it's crucial to remain aware of the underlying complexities and to brace ourselves for continued challenges in the skies until funding is restored and the air travel system can return to normal operations.